Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the MICAH South Dakota County Housing 2024 Virtual Bus Tour. I'm Sue Watlov Phillips. I am the Executive Director of MICAH. I am going to be your bus driver. So I'm going to ask you to hang on as we're moving across Dakota County. I'm also going to ask that you don't drive like our little cartoon bus is going to drive. I'm going to turn it over to our host, Pat, get us started.
Hello, I'm Pat Eveslog, and I'm a planning member on MICAH South Dakota County Chapter. I am a parishioner at Mary Mother of the Church in Burnsville. MICAH is the Metropolitan Interfaith Council on Affordable Housing, and in 1988, this group came together to address the growing number of people experiencing homelessness. Our mission is to ensure that everyone without exception has safe, decent, accessible, stable, which includes rental, shared, and home ownership, affordable, at 30% of their income that meets their needs in the community of their choice. And we are a welcoming community where we love and treat others as ourselves. So we are a very diverse group of people. Many people involved in our group have experienced homelessness, housing instability, and or discrimination. And we are working with our congregations and organizations to address the immediate needs of the people in our community. We work together at the national, state, and local level to address systematic causes of homelessness and through policy changes and the use of our resources to prevent homelessness and assist people and to address their immediate needs and to support affordable housing developments in our community. We're based on our faith and listening to and working with people who have experienced homelessness and housing crises. 70% of our board and staff are from diverse communities, and over half of our board and staff have experienced homelessness or crisis in their housing. We organize in 6 regional chapters around the metro, of which this is the Dakota County group. We work together with community-based organizations and developers in rehabbing and expanding the number of affordable housing units and to ensure we are meeting the immediate needs of our community members. We were honored to help facilitate the development and implementation of the Trusted Messengers program during the pandemic for the Minnesota Department of Health. It was recognized by HUD as a national model. And we are honored to provide information to families and individuals through a Minnesota Department of Revenue contract outreach and community engagement contract on the new child tax credit and other tax credit programs related to housing. So now, without further ado, I've told you a little bit about who we are. Now I would like to introduce Pastor Matthias Peterson Brandt from Cherokee Heights Church to share a little faith reflection with us today. Pastor Matthias?
Morning, y'all. It is good to be with you this morning. Thanks for being here. Again, my name is Pastor Matthias Peterson Brandt. I serve as the pastor at Cherokee Park United Church on the west side of St. Paul. We're right on the border between Ramsey and Dakota County, and particularly thinking about how essential housing is in light of climate change this morning, as well as we see folks displaced throughout the South and in North Carolina whose housing is just gone like that. So it can touch any of us at any time. Before moving to St. Paul, I lived in Los Angeles for about 10 years and served congregations there. And in one church I served, I'll share just a brief story. We had a food shelf program, and one of the gentlemen who would come in every day was this guy named George, and he had a number of mental health issues. He slept on he had his one particular slab of concrete where he would sleep every night about a block from the church and roll his sleeping bag out. And some days when he would come in, he couldn't keep a handle on his emotions and would have outbursts to where some days we just said, "You can't be here right now." And for years, he was on a waiting list to get into subsidized housing. And after years of waiting with him and walking with him and helping him with paperwork and all of these things, he got into an apartment. And the change in his mental health and his regulation and his stability, it just, to me, underscores how essential having a place to call home is. He would come in and he didn't have the same sort of outbursts because his basic need of having a safe place to be and to call home and shelter was taken care of. And so much else fell into place for him after that. So the work that MICAH does, the work of making sure all of our neighbors have a place to call home that is safe and warm and shelter, that goes so far beyond in terms of addressing so many other issues that we face as a society and as a culture. So I think of Jesus, who said the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. And I don't think he was offering that sort of to suggest that being homeless is some sort of virtue, but just as a statement of fact. He wandered and literally did not have a home except where people welcomed him in. And so then too, it is our work, our ministry, if you come from that sort of faith background, to see that all of our unhoused brothers and sisters and siblings have a place to call home, because in each of us is the image of God. And if Christ lived without a home, we should see in anyone, regardless of their housing status, that same sacred image reflected back at us. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, MICAH, for inviting me, and thanks for being part of this bus tour today. Good to be with y'all.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful testimony of the importance of all of our work. So MICAH lives out our prophetic vision that calls us to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. And as Pat mentioned, MICAH envisions a metropolitan area and a country and a world where everyone, without exception, has a safe, decent, accessible, and affordable home. So some rules of the bus. Okay, our meeting is being recorded so others can view it later. So please stay muted until you're called on. Raise your hand physically or in the participants menu or in the chat for a question. We'll try to answer some questions during presentations, but we have a pretty tight schedule. So please put your questions into the chat and we'll ask presenters to respond to you too. If at any time the audio or video presentation seems choppy, try turning off your camera feed and that'll hopefully help. And no spitballs on the bus. So let's get on board. And before we get started, MICAH's bus tour theme is homes, not criminalization. Most of you know that the Supreme Court recently ruled that communities could criminalize people that are experiencing unsheltered homelessness on public property. Minnesota opposed that ruling and submitted an amicus brief or amicus brief, depending upon how you say that, along with several other states and communities, basically saying, no, we should not be criminalizing people that are experiencing homelessness. As Pastor just said, we recognize there are many reasons why people are experiencing homelessness and housing instability. And one of the major reasons is the cost of housing. It continues to go up, both our rental housing as well as our home ownership. And the jobs that we have for people in the community don't pay enough for people to afford that housing. Here on the screen, this is 2023 report from Minnesota Housing Partnership. They update it every 2 years. You can see that we have a lot of folks that are working hard in Dakota County that cannot afford housing, and oftentimes are working a couple different jobs. We want to be a welcoming community where we love each other and we share our resources with our neighbors, and to really be that treat others as ourselves. We'd like to take just a moment of silence and remember all the people that have been impacted and displaced and homeless now from the hurricanes, from all natural disasters, from wars, people that are experiencing homelessness in our country right now, and housing instability. and also to remember the importance that elections do matter. All right, here we go. Hang on. This cartoon bus runs pretty interesting. Please do not do this on any of the Dakota County roads or freeways. All right, we are at our first stop. You're on mute, Pat.
Okay, I'd like to welcome James Albrecht from Dakota County, who is their Prevention Program Coordinator. James?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, MICAH South, for hosting this. It's great to see everyone. I'm going to share my screen here. Bear with me just a second. Hopefully you're able to see my slide.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see does it show prevention program highlights?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, so like Pat said, I'm James Albrecht. I'm a program coordinator with Dakota County Housing and Community Services. And we're going to talk about prevention programs. I'm going to move kind of quickly through the slides because we want to cover as much as we can, but I know we're on a tight timeline. So I'm joined today by Ariana Lavalle from 360 Communities, Denise Smieja from The Link, and Rebecca Bowers with Dakota County. So before we get into that, I think it's important to address the question of why invest in prevention. The short answer to the question is it's better for everyone. We know that it's more effective and less expensive. We know that losing the housing and homelessness have major life consequences. They're traumatic experiences and cause setbacks. And we know that investing in prevention is really investing in having stable community and healthy families. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with, our prevention programs here, but just really quickly, the Dakota County Prevention umbrella really encompasses 4 areas. It's prevention, services, and navigation, emergency rental assistance for families that are facing eviction, on-site apartment services throughout Dakota County through the Dakota County on-site housing support program, and then we have housing clinic services at eviction court that serves families facing eviction. And this is our prevention unit team. These are other members. We have 6 social workers, 2 program coordinators, and Rebecca Bowers, who is our supervisor, who we'll be hearing from shortly. And the main goal of our team, which is relatively new, it was incorporated into Housing Community Services earlier this year. Main goal is to prevent eviction and stabilize households by providing tenant support, navigation services, short-term case management, and financial assistance. And then we also plan and coordinate and implement prevention-focused funding, such as FHPAP, local homeless prevention aid, and local affordable housing aid. And today we're going to focus mainly on local homeless prevention aid because that's the newest funding stream. This program was started in July 2023, and it's funding from the Department of Revenue. Dakota County got, for 2025, we got just under $1 million. And the purpose of this funding is to ensure that no child is homeless, prevent homelessness, and to help those experiencing homelessness secure stable housing. We developed this program, LHPA, as we call it, with previous planning with school liaisons and the Affordable Housing Coalition. And the county contracts with 2 fantastic agencies, 360 Communities and The Link, to provide services. The definition that you have to meet to be eligible for LHPA is you have to be McKinney-Vento homeless. So that's going to be it's school-aged children that lack a fixed, regular, adequate nighttime residence. I should say school-aged children and their families. And I'm going to turn it over to Ari from 360 Communities to share a little bit more about what they've been doing over the last year.
Thanks, James. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. My name's Ariana Lavalle. I'm our Children and Youth Services Manager at 360 Communities. So I oversee our local homeless prevention aid program. Just a brief overview of 360 Communities, if folks aren't familiar. We're a Dakota County nonprofit organization, and our mission is to provide safety and stability that improves lives. We have 3 main service areas. Those include community resources with our resource centers, financial assistance, housing court, violence prevention and intervention, so providing domestic and sexual violence services to folks, and then our school success area. That includes childcare, where our Partners for Success program, and then also this is where local homeless prevention aid falls, because we're connected to schools and really focused on the kid and providing that safety and stability. So I'll jump into our program with local homeless prevention aid over the last year. So we call our program internally and kind of with our school folks, Housing for Success. And so through a team of 5 housing navigators, we are providing case management support and financial assistance services, like James said, to families identified as McKinney-Vento through their local school district. The overall goal, again, limit that duration of child homelessness, eliminate child homelessness, and support that overall family with holistic services, assessing individual needs, navigating resources, trying to identify the barriers to stable housing. And again, they're McKinney-Vento families. So supporting their experience during homelessness, and then also kind of creating that pathway of how can we get you towards securing safe and stable housing. We know a big piece of it is financial assistance, so we'll talk more about what that has looked like over the last year. So how we get connected to families, a big piece of this is getting referrals from school districts. So over the last year, we built strong relationships and connections to school districts, talked about who's best suited to identify families, who knows families that are McKinney-Vento through their school district, and then the program receives those referrals from support staff in 9 school districts throughout the county. Next slide. So our year 1 outcomes, so we served a total of 294 individuals. That included 179 children from 80 families. We distributed $123,875 in financial assistance. So that was directly to support families to overcome barriers towards stable housing. The majority of that went to first month's rent and deposit. We know that that is a big lift for people to get into housing. Some other pieces were vital documents that's required, other additional rental aid, some past owed amounts that people had from previous evictions that we know that is a big barrier for them to obtain housing again. So the financial assistance piece is a really great piece of this aid. We helped 30 families get stably housed. And that included 39 adults and 80 children. And we didn't really get up and running, I would say, probably until about November or December. So 30 families from then until the end of June. That's a pretty big impact. We are proud of that. Additional holistic services themes that have showed up from the data. So a high amount of referrals to legal assistance, other financial support to kind of help that overall stability, and then healthcare resources too. We also did a lot of goal setting, of course, around housing, because that's the main goal, but also around, employment and income is really key, financial stability, and again, healthcare rose to the surface for some other support and resources we provided. Other services, kind of what the work looks like. Housing search is a big one, application assistance, resource navigation, again, that holistic support to kind of get to that safety and stability, accessing tangible items, so clothing, hygiene products, things that we know that we can provide that offset that monthly budget, and then support around domestic and sexual violence. We have those internal services at 360, so getting people connected to that, because we know there's that intersection between people experiencing homelessness and then and domestic and sexual violence that families might experience. Next slide. wanted to share a success story with you. So this is from our housing navigator, Zahori Baja Ramos. Family came 3 years ago from Cuba. The family just had wife and 2 daughters that came recently, and they were staying with some friends from church, and they needed a 3-bedroom apartment. Those are very hard to come by. Couple weeks had passed, and the family had reached out to Zahori, letting her know that there was a townhome available through someone that they knew in their budget. So we were able to provide the first month's rented deposit. The family got housed, and Zahori continued to work with him through those other safety and stability needs. So met with the family on multiple occasions to complete work permits, get social security cards. Zahori also assisted them with getting signed up for health insurance. So that resource navigation piece, getting verification submitted, helping with the applications. And then Zahori recently said that some of them already got their insurance cards, some are already waiting. And now that the wife and oldest daughter are able to also work, they're in the process of looking for an employment, which will alleviate the burden of a single income and really help them maintain a solid rental history and be able to have more wiggle room in their budget and pay rent on time. So Zahori said, I'm so happy for all they've accomplished in their short time in this country, and I'm sure great things will follow. So yeah, really thankful for this aid and this program. We're really getting connected to families that I think otherwise wouldn't be accessing services, and it's all about supporting those kids and providing that safety and stability.
Good morning. I'm Denise. I'm the Contracts and Evaluation Director at the Link. The Link's mission is to work with youth and families to overcome the impacts of poverty and social injustice. Excuse me. We are a youth and adult-led organization that provides services to youth and young families transitioning from homelessness, sexual exploitation, and the juvenile legal system. And we serve around 2,000 young people a year across the 7-county metro. Next slide. Our core services are our drop-in center, which is in Apple Valley at Grace Lutheran Church. CORE provides a continuum of services for youth up to age 25 who are experiencing homelessness. We have, like I said, the whole continuum. So we start with street outreach. We have a drop-in center that's open 5 days a week. We provide case management for young people, especially those who have been assessed for coordinated entry and are ready, getting ready for housing. So their case manager works with them on everything up to their housing. We have the CORE Hotel Shelter and our coordinated entry assessment. We are the Dakota County Youth contact when they contact the Housing Resource Line. And then we have our school-based case management, which is funded through LHPA. Next slide. So we are led by our Housing Youth Advisory Committee that's made up of young people who have lived experience of homelessness, and they helped us design and carry out this program. They named it Future Independent Pathways. And our Future Independent Pathways program provides school-based outreach and case management for unaccompanied homeless youth in schools in Dakota County. We work with schools and community partners to identify homeless youth. We provide case management. We connect youth to support and safety, financial assistance, and housing stability. We did have a little bit of a slower start. One of the things, we're working with unaccompanied minors, and the schools were really wary of young people, of not having a parental consent. So not being able to sign consent forms for us to work with a youth that's 16 or 17. And we talked about, that's why they're unaccompanied homeless youth, is that we really need to provide these services. But we've worked around that and found ways to be really supportive of young people. But a lot of our young people are kind of in that transition age. So they're a little bit older, 17 and 18, still school aged, but a little older. The program impacts include the following. So we're working on all of our youth have, we use person-centered programming. So they identify their own goals and have an individualized service plan. So whatever they want to work on, that's what we're going to help them with. Of course, housing stability is the key. We helped a lot. We're helping a lot of young people with vital documents. We also know it's important that youth have a supportive community around them. So we're working to help them identify positive adult relationships that can be called upon. And then we're hoping when they exit that they're on the priority list or have moved into housing. These are our wonderful FIP, which we call it, because we have to have an acronym for everything. It's Katie and Lucas. So during the first school year, we worked with 19 students. We work with them very intensely. So we do have smaller caseloads. This is since January, so the first school year. 7 of these students have moved into their own apartments. 4 were able to maintain their housing situation. 3 have been living in our hotel shelter program, and 5 students are couch hopping. Some highlights. We had 6 seniors graduate on time with their peers through the support of the FIT program. We had a graduation that we held for a Grace Church, and there was a picture wall, there were several cakes. They really appreciated having that support. We did help with 3 family reunifications for a lot of our young people. Those relationships with their parents have been strained, or with their guardians, whoever that may be. And we helped them figure out how to get back home, which is really important for our young people as well, to have that long-term stability and that family support, because no matter how bad the situation is, they always talk about their parents and how hard if those relationships are strained, they really want to try to improve those. We did help a lot with damage deposits and first month's rent for 3 students. We supported a student with their immigration status, and that continues. We secured shelter through hotel vouchers for 3 students with no other place to live. Lots of students helped with getting their vital documents, which is essential when they're ready to get housing. And then a lot of financial assistance. We really appreciate the flexibility of these funds. We were able to help young people with needing eyeglasses, interview and back to school clothes, car repairs, which is especially important for young people in Dakota County because a lot of them are staying in their car. So if their car breaks down, that's their place to stay and they lose that. Cell phones, also very important for them to stay in contact with not only us, but anybody that's important in their life. If they want to get a job, if they want housing, they need to have some way to contact them, and then move in essentials for those young people that moved into housing. Just a quick success story. We had one young person that Katie worked with. She was a senior in high school. She was behind, but she was able to catch up and graduate on time. She was part of our graduation ceremony. And she called and left a voice message for Katie, thanking her for her support because she had received a job, which she called a big boss job. She was going to be making $19 an hour and have benefits, which she thought was amazing. She didn't even know what all that entailed, but she was very excited and just happy to have some stability in her life. And these are the contacts. So Katie and Lucas, our case manager. Aaron is our street outreach worker. And if you need any program information, you can reach out to Tiana Odine, and there's her email. Thank you.
Okay, now, I'd like to introduce,
Sorry,
this is where
I've got a couple more slides. I'll be quick. So my name is Rebecca Bowers. I'm the prevention team supervisor. As James was mentioning, our team provides a short-term case management to prevent eviction and stabilize housing and connect people to longer-term services. I want to just provide a little bit of background on some of the funding we use and the needs we're seeing. Our primary funding source that we're using over the past year has been the state affordable and LAHA, local affordable housing aid. Our team has about $1 million to spend for eviction prevention, and we're very grateful for this funding source. So thank you to the legislators for getting that new funding source for us. But it's still not enough to meet needs. We've spent through all of it, but $200,000 that we have left for the remainder of this year. We're experiencing a large funding cliff with the end of Rent Help MN, and the infusion of FHPAP Fast Track ended on September 30th. If we could go to the next slide, please. So who do we serve? So people need to be housed. So they need to be housed in an imminent risk. So we're working with people who are at the point of losing housing. We have income requirements. They have to have no other ability to resolve. And we do prioritize based on income. So we serve a little bit lower income and prioritize families because they're not enough to go around. If you could go to the next slide, please. And quickly, who we're serving for referral sources, as you can see in the blue there, our majority of referrals come from eviction court. So we are prioritizing those at the emergency state. 56% are from eviction court. Our next biggest one has been through the Dakota CDA. And then we also have a number of other referral sources that primarily come from the housing resource line. As we prioritize eviction court, we fill up with those pretty fast, but if we do have any additional capacity, we do take referrals from the housing resource line, and that number is on the screen. So that's where you would refer everybody. Quickly to the next couple slides, I want to just share what we're seeing because I think this will be shocking to many people. This is the number of monthly evictions filings this year in Dakota. You can see it's changed over time for various reasons. Recently, so September, we had 171 eviction filings in Dakota County alone in that 1 month. In August, it was 197. So that's a lot. We can not even get close to meeting that need. And on the next slide, you can see what that looks like for one recent month. For September, you can see in 1 week, first week of September, 52 filings. We only have enough money for about 4 households a week. So we are not even scratching the surface of that, less than 10% of the needs. So it's a problem right now. We need additional funding and are thankful for any funding that we can get. We will share this presentation with MICAH so that can be sent out so you can have a closer look at the data. And then on the next slide, you can see where we fall throughout the state. So as Sue was mentioning, the difficulty with affordability and high rents, we have the second highest median rent in the state of all the counties and the third highest filings in the state as of August 24th. So a lot of filings, a lot of high rent. People can't get their rent paid in time. So affordability is the biggest need. People are having difficulty keeping up. So, and on the last slide, I just want to wrap up with some quick accomplishments. So even though we don't have enough money to meet all the needs, we're doing great things with the money that we do have. Our team has served over 340 households since we started the beginning of the year and been able to prevent 90% of the evictions for those that we work with. We've spent over $730,000 to prevent eviction for 169 households, a little over $4,000 per household, and also partnered with a lot of other agencies to be able to use other resources. So I want to thank everybody for letting us share what the work of the prevention area is and how important it is. And as mentioned, we've got this funding cliff. And as much money we can direct towards prevention is well spent to keep people in housing. So thank you, everyone, for letting us share this and highlight our needs.
Thank you so very much, all of you. What a great presentation. I am going to share my screen and we are going to move on to our next bus stop in just a moment here. Thank you again. Great presentation, great work. And again, all these slides and the recording will be on our website in the next few weeks. And we're going to move on. Our little bus taken off. And this is kind of the area where the hotel shelter is located at. Obviously, we're not going to make this specific because we want to respect the privacy of folks that are utilizing that. And Pat?
I'd like to welcome Jason Davis now. He is the emergency shelter supervisor at the hotel, and he's going to share a little bit about what has been going on there and how the groups that they're working with, both the Link and Ally. Jason?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jason Davis. I'm the supervisor for the Dakota County Emergency Shelter Program. Let me share my screen here. The Dakota County Emergency Shelter Program was established in 2021. Our goal here is to service, we have the capacity to serve 50 participants in the shelter. The population that we serve are single and partnered adults seeking shelter in connection to long-term housing. We do this through our case management philosophy. Shelter social workers partner with households to understand their strengths and challenges and to connect them to resources with the goal of connecting them to long-term housing. Shelter social workers partner with households and by meeting them where they're at, addressing their needs and trying to reduce their barriers to finding housing. This is done through treating all individuals with respect and dignity, advocating on the behalf of shelter guests to secure housing in a way that they are comfortable, and providing services and support to shelter guests to assist with their housing plans. Our shelter team members come from a wide variety of backgrounds and expertise. The team currently, as it stands now, are Muna Adan. She's a social worker with quite an extensive history in working with mental health concerns. Alejandra Gonzalez Espinosa, who's a social worker who has worked with securing housing with clients for a long period of time. Laura Ning, who has a background in education and who also has a strong background in shelter work. Katie McCarville provides support to our program, and then Linda Hall assists us with our policy and our shelter operations. On the screen, you have an example of one of the rooms that we have for our shelter clients. Since we operate out of a hotel, the shelter is actually pet friendly. So people are encouraged to bring their service animals or emotional support animals with them to the shelter to make their stay comfortable. If you have any further questions about the shelter program, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to discuss the program in further detail. With that being said, I will pass this along to Denise from the link to give some more information about their program.
I'm on mute. I'm back. Let me share my slides. Oh, that's not what you want to see. I should have practiced this. I don't know how to get out here. Stop sharing. All right, I'm just going to go without my slides. Sorry about that. They're really pretty, though. The core shelter uses a hotel model, and we provide shelter for 15 youth a night. We serve all gender identities, and youth are 18 to 24 that are experiencing homelessness. Our stays are typically around 4 months. The goal is to provide a safe and welcoming place for youth to transition out of crisis and into stability. We use a housing first model, so we don't have criteria regarding sobriety status, if they're a victim of domestic violence, if they have employment status or any criminal history. Youth and referral partners call the Dakota County Housing Resource Line to inquire about openings. Services are included are case management, advocacy, referrals, support with employment, and preparing for a housing referral or other permanent housing options. In the last year, we had 55 shelter guests. All 55 were provided with basic needs supplies, and 34 youth exited to permanent housing. And then just to share a success story, We moved Julian, the name has been changed, into our hotel shelter program in January of this year. His immediate goals were housing, education, and employment, all with the bigger goal of establishing himself so he could bring his young daughter here for a safer life than they had experienced in Chicago. It was really exciting to see how dedicated and thoughtful he was. He worked with Meg, who does our coordinated entry assessments, to get assessed and get on the housing priority list. With Diara, his case manager, he wanted to really work on education so he could earn a higher wage. So he got enrolled at Summit Academy. Well, after being there for a little while and having some stability, he started looking for jobs that were close to Summit so he could continue his education. He was hired as a personal care attendant in a residential program for senior citizens in April and started working there full time. He was also, during this time, utilizing the CORE program for basic needs and saved up his paychecks for future housing expenses. And he did receive a housing referral to the Link Suburban Rapid Rehousing Program and began the housing search. He moved into an apartment in St. Paul near his employment and in June. He has since brought his 4-year-old daughter to stay with him for the future. And as a move out and Father's Day gift for hotel program, gave him a year-long membership to the zoo so he could bring his daughter there for family outings. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise, for that presentation. We'll pass this along to Amber from Allies so she can discuss information about their hotel shelter program.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amber from Ally Supportive Services. I'm going to talk about shelter first. Share my screen here. Let's see. Hopefully that comes through okay. This is normally where I struggle.
Looks great.
There we go. Just a brief overview on Ally. We were founded in 2013, and our name, Ally, comes from the Dakota language, meaning ally. We started Ally with the goal of resolving homelessness in Dakota County. We are serving Dakota County only. We opt to be extremely low barrier and person-centered. And we take a community approach as well as a person-centered approach. We believe that we are serving the community whenever we're serving any particular individual in front of us. We're also a small, team-oriented group of just 11 of us. We have the emergency hotel shelter with about, I think, 5 hotels, motels scattered throughout Dakota County. We do this for various reasons. To meet the needs of those we are serving that are guests in our hotel shelter, and to meet the needs of the community. To the folks that are in our hotel shelter are Dakota County unsheltered residents. So they must be currently experiencing outside homelessness in our community and engaged and verified by our homeless street outreach team. They must also have the inability to pay for their hotel independently. So there is a low income component. We do a priority wait list. So every week we assess the folks that are outside homeless in Dakota County that we know of. And we prioritize the wait list according to different vulnerabilities, time waiting, and community need as well. We are just talking within my team about how many folks we think are outside like today that we know of. And it's probably right around 100 folks that we know of today on October 3rd in Dakota County. So we know there's always folks that we don't know about. So that's only a very small percentage. But as we're talking about shelter beds today, you'll see that we definitely don't have enough. Our hotel shelter shelters 15 to 20 individuals. We're at about 20 now. It kind of depends on the room availability, and summertime rooms get really expensive. So we have to adjust it that way. We aim for a 90-day stay, and we assess each individual case weekly and extend stays as needed. And that is, I'm going to stop sharing and hand it back off.
Thanks so much, Amber. And I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to actually go over to Ally Services and continue further discussion here. Thank you all for your work with the Dakota Emergency Hotel Shelter. Before we leave, though, I want to ask Madeline if she'll come on screen. We know that Dakota County has been working really hard, both in sheltering people through the hotel shelter, but we also, and doing a great job with that, we also know that you're working on developing a permanent emergency housing shelter in Dakota County. And if you could give an update on that, please.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for that question, Sue. The Dakota County Board has been considering the question of a permanent shelter for a few years now. The next time this will come up for conversation with the board is on October 22nd, so later this month, at a committee meeting. And that agenda and detail for that meeting will be posted on the Dakota County website about a week before the meeting. And they'll be talking about plans to and strategy for moving forward with the permanent shelter project. So thanks for inquiring, Sue.
Great, and I know that you've also hired an engagement person, Linda, to help with some of that process. So we look forward to working together in developing a permanent shelter, as well as using hotels as needed throughout Dakota County. Thank you so much. And so we're going to head on down the road here over to talk with Amber and friends a little bit more. So again, these are the links to the information. And again, the slides and the recording will be on MICAH's website. So onto the bus again. Please do not drive this way in Dakota County. Having problems starting the bus here. There it goes. Okay, Pat.
So now we'll hear again from Amber, who is joined by two of her housing support residents that can help us understand a little more about it, Tyrese and Antoine. So welcome, Amber.
Oops.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, first I'm going to share my screen again and then hand it off to Tyrese. So today, I talked about the emergency hotel shelter program. We have the homeless street outreach, and we have our housing support program for long-term homeless. This program is I'm a huge supporter of it, and thank you, MICAH, for all the work that has been done for many, many years on making this program what it is today. Today at Ally, we serve about 170 individuals in scattered site housing throughout Dakota County. So each individual is long-term homeless by Minnesota definition and has a lease with the landlord in the community. Different housing options are single room occupancies, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartments, shared housing, and single family homes with shared housing. So folks are renting a room and sharing common spaces. And some folks that I'm with today are in that type of situation. These are some other tidbits about what we do in our housing support program. We assist with connecting with the landlords and the housing situation in the community, mitigating housing and rental issues, coordinating with landlords, and then supporting people with a very, very person-centered approach to maintain their independent housing in the community and reach their goals. I really don't want to talk too much because these guys have way more important things to say, but I do want to mention there's a couple things that really still need to be done and looked at with this program statewide. One of them is the ability to pay for storage. When the allowable expenses were looked at and changed, I want to say a couple of years, was it last year? A couple of years ago? The ability to pay for storage really negatively affected the folks that I'm serving. Not only those going into the program, but those that are already in the housing support program. The ability to pay for storage is necessary to help with the journey out of homelessness, and that transition time to deal with belongings is absolutely imperative. So I just wanted to put that out there, that is something we really need to be looking at in a bigger picture. And then the reduced service rate for those on the Housing Stability Services Program and on the Housing Support Program. I know there's some struggles with housing stability services right now, but one of the biggest issues I also see is our reduced rate on this housing support program, because we still want to provide the same amount of service, but we need the same service rate to be doing so and not be cutting services at Ally or the rate. So I really would like that to be looked at a higher level. And then, of course, I can use my plug, Homeless Street Outreach. What do we need to work on? We still always need more funding to do the work, and we need our permanent shelter. I'm going to hand it off to Tyrese. I'm going to stop sharing, and he's going to tell you about his experience.
Hello. I was homeless for about 10 years before I met Amber. And just Allies has been so much of a big help in just staying sober, you know what I mean, and just staying positive and staying on this journey. Because so much of being positive and being in recovery and being sober is kind of removing myself from that old environment that I was in. And now, you know, I can focus on what I want to do with my future. I remember being on the streets for, you know, that so long. I was always focused on the negative, you know what I mean, just about what I didn't have, you know what I mean, and meeting Amber and Ally, it just makes me feel like a human again, you know what I mean, to that I'm part of this thing called life, you know what I mean, that I do have a house, you know what I mean, like I can't speak enough about how much I didn't feel like, you know, like an actual person before, you know, meeting Amber. And, you know, because like I said, you know, she listens to my story, you know what I mean? And I have had some battles and I'm still battling, like with my job and, cause I'm currently unemployed right now. And I had a job. And so, you know, it was kind of a situation with my background, but even then through this whole thing, Amber and Ally has been here to just kind of be my safety net, be that foundation that I can continue to build upon. And I wrote a little thank you letter for Amber. So I'm gonna share it really fast. All right. I just want to say thank you to Amber and everybody at Ally. I want to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude for all the incredible support you've given me. Your help in finding my own place to live and assisting me with moving my brother in has truly made a significant impact on my life. Thanks to you, I've been able to stay on a positive path and maintain my sobriety. Your kindness and generosity have been a guiding light for me, and I am so thankful to have you in my life.
You want to introduce your brother?
Oh yeah, this is my brother. So yes, my name is Ronald Johnson. I guess I'll briefly share really quick. I feel like I'm somewhat of a success story too because I experienced homelessness directly. Literally, I was using drugs for years, and I know that coming out of prison and I have 9 felonies, and I know that coming out of prison, it would have been the same thing. It would have been going back to the streets, committing more crimes, and going back to jail. And I know that having this opportunity and being able to come into Ally, it took kind of all of that out of my world. I've been able to be a father to my daughters. I've been able to be in their lives and just kind of change my trajectory of where I was going. Today, I'm focusing on my small goals. I have the ability to participate in changing rather than wasting away. So like I said, it's a huge opportunity for me, and
Thank you. And now we have Antoine as well. Switch it over this way.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Antoine. I started my journey with Ally in the shelter program, and they rescued me out of my vehicle. It barely ran, and sleeping in that car at nights. I can remember some stormy nights, waking up at 2, 3 in the morning, and can't sleep, just seeing that rain pouring and thinking, will I ever have another place to go? And I got a hold to Ally, and they put me in the hotel free of charge, and it took so much weight off my chest, and I prayed God and I thank God, and just to be able to take a shower and not have to go to a store or something to use the bathroom. It's I don't want to take those things for granted anymore, and there's many other people out here like that that's going through it. And you got people like Amber here and people like Allied to come together and help and willing to help people and give their time to help other people. That's a blessing. And we need that here in these streets. And it also inspired me to want to help more people, so as I get myself together here on this program, I vow to myself to make sure that I can help anyone who comes across, because what Allied done for me is just breathtaking. I can't even put the words together. It makes my children able to come see me and look at me as being stable. And now it gives me the strength to want to do, to do right and get off the program and help others and whatever I can do. Right now I'm looking for employment so I can start saving and get into another place of my own. And without Ally, I don't even think I would be able to do this right now. I don't even know where I would be right now if it wasn't for Ally and Amber and the state of Minnesota. I thank you guys, and if there's anything that you need me to do, cut grass or whatever, help out, I will.
Let us know.
For this opportunity, it makes me want to give back so much more. And I appreciate Amber and everyone for that.
Thank you all for telling your stories. And Ally and I wouldn't be able to do what we do without all of you guys. So everybody on this call, thank you guys all so much for caring enough to be here and all the work you've done to allow us to do what we're doing at Ally.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Amber and Therese and Anton and brother.
Ronald. Sorry.
It's such a great stories, and we are so happy for you, and we wish the absolute best for you. Before we let you go, though, I just want to mention to everybody that Amber was doing a presentation on Ally Services and the incredible work with people that are experiencing unsheltered homelessness on a national webinar earlier this week on Monday. And did an excellent job. We had over 500 people on that HUD examples of great work that's being done around the country. So thank you again for all your incredible work. Thank you all for being here and sharing your stories.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to share my screen again. And thank you again so much. Really appreciate it. And so we're going to get going to our next stop. Sorry, you're hearing a phone in the background. And we'll get the bus going. And we're going to go down to the CDA. Pat?
Okay, and here we are at the Community Development Association of Dakota County, and I'd like to welcome Tony Schertler, who is their Executive Director, who's going to share a bit about what housing and what things are going on over at the CDA. Tony?
Thanks. And again, my name's Tony Schertler. I'm the Executive Director of the Dakota County CDA. I'm going to ask Sarah Swenson, my Director of Administration, to help me navigate the slideshow because I'm not the most technically savvy person. But I wanted to just touch on a couple of things first. I think when we think about housing and the continuum, I like to frame it into sort of three legs of the stool. There's the unit. There's obviously a place to shelter. We are the permanent housing provider. So on that continuum, we're the place where people stay for more than a year, typically. The other leg of the stool is rent assistance, because there are a lot of people who may be able to get housing but are rent burdened. And so they need a voucher or they need some assistance to help them continue to stay in their housing. And then the third leg of the stool is really what Rebecca and Madeline and Allied and Link, kind of the service bundle, what we're doing to help people build capacity to stand up and live fruitful lives and beneficial lives. So those three legs of the stool are really where we're constantly flowing resources in to help on that continuum. And I sort of bring this up because as dollars come available or policymakers are directing resources, thinking about which part of those stress points we're trying to solve for. So we tend to look at the world on the public sector side very programmatically, but it's important to remember that there are people behind every one of these programs that we help. And it's incumbent upon us at the public sector and as a community to make sure that we see everybody and that we understand what their challenges are. And Rebecca made a comment that, Dakota County we're the third highest eviction rate in the state. Well, we're the third largest county. And, just to put it in perspective, because I always like to think of these in contextual terms, Dakota County has a population that's greater than the country of Iceland. And so we are trying to make sure that we help and see everybody in Dakota County that needs our help and really work through all these programs and identify the folks who are along that continuum. So we've been working a lot on that. And Sarah Swenson, my Director of Administration, we meet regularly to see where people are on our waiting list. Where are they? What program or services are they waiting for? Because it's incumbent upon us to close the gap between the need and the resource that's available. So we have to push that down to the person as quickly and responsibly as possible. So we've got 11 slides here that we've put together to talk a little bit about us, and I don't want to dwell on it too long, but again, back to what I said earlier, we look at the world through these lens of programs that are targeted for demographic people. So we have, and you should be very proud of this in Dakota County because you're the first in the country to do this. We have a senior housing program for 62 and up. We have 30 developments throughout the county. That program is funded entirely by a property tax levy and the rents those seniors pay. That's the first in the country, and we now have more senior housing units than we have public housing units in Dakota County. Dakota County leads the country. If you look at Harvard Business Journal from the early 90s, Dakota County was the first in the country to use essential function bonds to provide affordable housing. So as a community, we're very much leaning in to address the affordable housing needs of our elders. We're excited. We have a new project. When the federal government came out with ARPA money, which is American Rescue Plan dollars during the pandemic, we are open just last week, 24 units of senior housing in Eagan, right by the outlet mall, 55 and up, with a veteran's preference. That project, modest, one bedroom. It's a great project. It's right next to the transit facility over in Eagan. City was a great supporter. Collaboratively, we need all our partners there. So the city was a great supporter of this project. The county board appropriated ARPA dollars through the CDA to build this project. And we had 24 units. We had about 400 people on the waiting list, and we're working our way through that, and it's fully occupied, or will be fully occupied by the end of the month. We also serve families with children. We have our public housing, our sort of legacy program from the 70s that we are still repositioning, and our Section 18 program, as well as our tax credit workforce family housing program. And I'll get into the details of who the who we serve on that in a moment. We also have individuals we've been trying. We're always sort of in the lab trying to figure out what's the next product we need to support out there to work with challenged demographics, folks who are struggling with affordable housing. So Gateway Place in West St. Paul, instead of senior housing, we use the same financial tool to build a general occupancy, 1-bedroom and efficiency project at Gateway, which is 54 units. Clean Loney Manor is in West St. Paul as well. That's 84 units. That is a public housing project, but that's single 1-bedroom units. So again, we're sort of, as we look along the waterfront of challenges, how many 1-bedrooms do we have available for people? And then we do have some 1-bedrooms in our townhome developments. We also serve homeless youth. That was a project that started in partnership with Dakota County. The county provides the service agreement for that. It's supportive housing for homeless youth. That's 24 units. That's also in Eagan. It's on the east side of the outlet mall. It's been a very successful project. And we're constantly working on how those kids doing. Are they being able to get a job? Are they moving on? Are we addressing their service needs? Next slide. Sarah, are you driving? There you go. So Sue asked us to talk a little bit about Lakeville. And so we've just highlighted, we're Dakota County wide, but we just highlighted some of the projects that the CDA directly owns in Lakeville. So we have Windsor Plaza Senior Housing, Main Street Manor, Crossroad Commons, Argonne Hills is our latest senior housing project. We also have 175 units of our family workforce housing. A lot of times single mom, maybe recently divorced with kids. She's going to school. We're trying to reduce that cost of housing for her while she gets on her feet again. And so we have Cedar Valley, Country Lane, Prairie Crossing, Meadowlark, and Keystone Crossing. So those are townhome developments we have in Lakeville. And then we got this legacy public housing that we're repositioning and refreshing and trying to modernize. We have about eight public housing units and 11 Section 18 units. Next slide. So our workforce family housing, this is a program we started after the 1986 Tax Act that allowed for a 9% financing tool. We have 26 developments throughout the county, 847 units. I just want to call out our board member, Mary Liz Holberg, who's been championing some of the accessibility issues in these units. So we're trying to make sure that we're always keeping an eye on making these units available. We have a separate waiting list for folks who have mobility issues, and then modifying those properties or making sure those properties are easy to access. You run into, there's sort of a legacy of code issues that have developed over time. And so we're always trying to take a look at ourselves in the mirror and say, are we doing this right? And then things we can do better. We have some 1-bedroom in our family townhome projects. That's just, again, because we know the demand for that is high throughout the county. This project, it says 60% of area median income. That's the target demographic. But a lot of the folks we have in there are 50% of area median income. We're probably the most affordable 9% tax credit project in the state of Minnesota. Nobody has lower rents than us. Next slide, please. We have a new townhome project in Farmington. So this is exciting. We've been working on this for a couple of years. We had some land just south, and we're rolling out a new product because we're repositioning our public housing. We're going to have a couple of 4-bedroom units in here. So we're looking for those larger families. And we got some single bedroom units in there as well. And again, this is part of that same workforce family housing program. It's just our next development. And the other thing is, as we finance these, and again, this is back to the policymakers who are directing resources, all of these projects are looking for gap financing to help us push down the rent burden on our tenants. Our prime directive, everything that we do is got to pivot off reducing that housing cost for folks who can't afford it. That is a huge homeless prevention effort, because as you know, if you're trying to make your rent payments and you got a couple of jobs and you're working on it, the more we can reduce that cost, the less likely it is that person is going to end up homeless. Next slide, please. So our CDA senior housing, as I touched on before, this is the first in the country that's essential function bond and funded entirely by your community's levy. These are the income limits. Sarah's also got, we have waiting list questions. We can always provide this data. We encourage you to contact us. But we have 1,700 senior housing units. Income limits are $68,000 for a single. 2-person is $78,000. We also have a sliding scale rent in our senior housing based on your income, so it can be lower. And then our flat rent buildings for those who don't need that sliding scale are $765 a month for a 1-bedroom, $937 a month for a 2-bedroom. Next slide, please. We have a new senior housing project developing. So as I said before, we have our new workforce family townhome in Farmington, in Inver Grove Heights. This yellow outline is the property we own. On the south side of that is our phase 1 Hillcrest building, which is our senior housing building. We're now going to be approaching the city of Inver Grove Heights. We're going to invite some folks out to do our next senior housing project, which will be on the north side. So this is efficient for us because we can put these buildings close together on an operational basis. It's more efficient. And it's an exciting project. I think our board is challenging us to go out there and develop more affordable housing for the CDA, and our senior housing project is very popular. As you can imagine, there are people who are aging in place in their housing and they're looking for the next place to move to that they can afford. Next slide, please. This is the senior veterans project that I was just talking about in Eagan. So those 3 parcels of land right over by the transit station at the outlet mall. This one was funded entirely by ARPA. And the rents are about $700 a month for a 1-bedroom. Very competitive for great views of Minneapolis. We're real excited about that project. We're going to have a ribbon cutting on that at some point, either later November or early December, so we can celebrate the occupancy and standing up of that effort. And we'd like to build another one of these. So we a couple of lessons we learned. We said, you know what, that thing flew off the shelf. People really needed it. So we'll be looking around the county for maybe another more modest type of residential development. Next slide, please. So our waiting list, and this is really important because Sarah and I have been talking about when we talk about the homeless continuum and everything else, people have to get on the waiting list. There is a federal voucher program. It's not an entitlement. So there are not a voucher for every person that's eligible. And there's some people who transition, but we need to see you. And so we're encouraging folks, wherever you are, please get on our waiting list, find out if you're eligible for a voucher. The voucher, a housing choice voucher, is the most efficient affordable housing tool in this country because it's portable. It can go anywhere in the country. It attaches to the individual. You have to live in Dakota County for a year when you get it here in Dakota County originally, but that's a very powerful tool to help offset your rent burden. And so that's something we need to get people, get on that list. Dakota County CDA was the first in the state to have an open waiting list. A lot of the PHAs, and there's 10 in the 7-county metro, there are 10 public housing agencies, we're the Dakota County one, have their waiting list, but they're closed. And so it's sort of like a blue light special. They open it up every 3 or 4 years, and then they start mining it down. We keep ours open, so we always have people get on the waiting list. Get on the waiting list, and then we do save your spot. You know, make sure you're still interested in a voucher when your name comes up. So the wait time for preference applications to CDA housing units about 18 to 24 months. So of course we don't have on-time supply. We have to build the units. People have to move through them. So there's always that turn. There's always that continuum, and that's basically just what the waiting list is. Our voucher waiting list is about 3 to 5 years. Save my spot I touched on already. Next slide. We're excited, City of Eagan. So the City of Eagan has done a vision of the north side of Central Commons. This is the old Delta Data Center site, which is what's happening now in the office market, as people are aware of, is there's an oversupply of that. Some of that is functionally obsolete. This property owner couldn't find a tenant for this property for 3 or 4 years. It was for sale. We're picking it up. We're going to demolish it, clean it up. And the city has a vision of 1,100 units of housing on that site, which is great on the overall supply side. We would like to build a couple of affordable developments over there, and that's a conversation we'll be having with the city and the community process over the next 5 years. So we're really excited about that. Next slide. That's the vision. So this is the city's really the lead on what their vision is for the redevelopment of this site. And as you can see, we've got the part, that Central Park West, that's the property we've picked up at the CDA, and we'll be repositioning that for a residential community in the near future. Next slide. And this is just another photograph. I don't want to take, this is really the city's vision, and then we're trying to help them implement it. Next slide. That's it. So thank you very much. And we have this information. If you want to reach out to us at any time, we're more than happy to provide you more details.
Thank you so much, Tony, and Sarah too. Just appreciate the incredible work that you folks do every day. So keep up the good work. We need it. We need as much housing as we can get. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to go to our last stop. And I see that Senator Port has joined us. And here we head up again. Don't drive this way in Dakota County, up to the state capitol. Just briefly, I'm going to just say a few words on what's happening on the national level, and then I'm going to turn it over to Senator Port to talk a little bit about what's going to be happening in the 2025 session. Again, I'm Sue Watlov Phillips. I'm the Executive Director of MICAH and also founding member and board member of the National Coalition for the Homeless. Also chair the policy committee there, also am a co-lead on the legislative team for Homes for All, which is a statewide coalition working to make sure that we have the resources to do that, all the great work that all of you are doing. On the federal level, as most of you know, we did not go into a government shutdown on September 30th at midnight. We did sign a continuing resolution, and what that is that we are currently being funded at the same level that we have been this last year. It's not enough money to keep all the things that are going across the country, but at least we did not go into a government shutdown. That's very good. The Biden administration has also done a number of things through executive order as well as through regulations to make housing more affordable, to provide land. All the federal agencies have been told to look at land that they're not currently being used, are not using, and make that available for affordable housing. So we're really excited about that, as well as some changes in properties that are funded with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in regards to some more tenant protections. We really want to spend some time with Senator Port. Throughout the webinar, Senator Port, we have heard a lot of discussion about the need for more resources. Obviously, we know that over the last 4 years during the pandemic, we had incredible resources coming through COVID resources and the American Rescue Plan dollars, and certainly with our historic 2023 session and additional increases in the 24 session, is that we have been able to expand some of the programming and services that we have across the entire continuum to housing, from outreach, drop-in centers, shelters, transitional housing, supportive housing, rental housing, both subsidized and not subsidized, home ownership, manufactured homes. But we know a lot of that has been one-time funding. I'm going to turn it over to you and have you share a little bit about your vision of what the 2025 session looks like, as we know that there's not enough in the base funding to keep everything going that we have right now.
Thanks so much, Sue. That's exactly right. You know, we have had sort of an incredible level of focus on housing over the last 4 years that just was not present before the pandemic. The federal funding that came in through the pandemic was really just a huge lift from the federal government that they have just not had a focus on housing over the last multiple decades. And during the 23 session, when we had a $17 billion surplus at the state level, we were able to secure a $1 billion investment, which really is about the equivalent of 10 bienniums, so 20 years worth of housing investment at the state level in 1 year. That is how, I don't want to say like that means we got an incredible overabundance of money. I think more it highlights the incredible underinvestment that we have made for so many years. And I think, you know, moving into next session, when we are not expecting a huge surplus, we'll be much closer likely to sort of base funding levels. Really the challenge we have in front of us is ensuring that housing gets a share that is at least like highlights the crisis that we are in. We cannot drop back down to base funding. It would be just catastrophic to the folks who have been able to get assistance, to get supportive housing help, the amount of FHPAP, so like emergency rental assistance, those sorts of things that go exactly to those programs that our counties are running, that nonprofits are running across the state that help keep people in their homes. If we drop that back down to base funding, it will sort of be a huge cliff for all of those programs. We're talking about emergency rental assistance. We're talking about the first generation down payment assistance program. The work the Challenge program does, which is the most flexible money, the housing infrastructure bonds, which help to make a runway of dedicated money for production. If all of that drops back down to base, it will be a really difficult cliff for all of these folks who provide housing, who provide assistance to be able to manage. And so we are really looking at what are the ways that without a big surplus that we can ensure that housing gets at least an amount that is meaningful. And I think there's a couple of different ways to think about that. First, there is a constitutional amendment that is looking at being added that would be dedicated funding for housing. And I think that dedicated stream is a thing that we really need to be talking about, because the base funding that we have for housing is it's not enough. So if we are going to take this crisis seriously, we need to put dedicated money to it so that we can plan over multiple years how to build the kind of infrastructure that we need so that every Minnesotan has a safe, affordable home. That shouldn't be like a crazy pipe dream that is totally out of reach. That should be a reasonable goal that we are fighting for. And that means dedicated funding, whether it's through the constitutional amendment, which I think is a great path. It lets the voters say that housing is a priority and they want it there. And it's much harder in future years to get rolled back if there's a legislature with different priorities. So that is a really stable, permanent, or as close to permanent as the legislature can do, solution. The other piece I think that we need to look at is just in general raising revenues to meet the needs of our state. I think people talk a lot about we don't want to raise taxes. We especially don't want to raise taxes, on the lower or middle classes. We're already experiencing really difficult economic concerns for those folks, and that is absolutely true. But that doesn't mean we can't raise revenue. There are still ways that we can ask corporations and the very wealthy to pay their fair share, to create a fifth tier for those extremely wealthy folks. There are tools that we have in the revenue space that we are not taking advantage of to make sure that we are actually getting the money that is needed to create really the great culture of having everything you need in your life here, that Minnesota is a place that you want to live, that folks want to move to, that they want to work at, that they want to get their education at. I came to Minnesota for college and am never leaving because Minnesota had for me, everything that I needed was right here. It had all the things for the quality of life that I wanted. And now as I'm raising my own kids here, I want to make sure that they see Minnesota still as that kind of place. And the reason it has been that kind of place in the past is because we put investments into things like higher education, like great school districts, like, access to healthcare. If those things are starting to go away, it makes it much harder to continue to keep people here. And housing is at the core of that. You cannot say you have a great quality of life in a place if you can't afford to live there, if you can't afford to live in the community you want to live in, if you can't age in place in the community that you want to live in, if you can't downsize to something reasonable as you grow older in the community that you helped build. Those are all priorities. And we just have never put that focus, that spotlight on the housing part of that. And so that is really, I think the coalition around housing did an incredible job in 2023 to make the case for why housing deserved $1 million budget increase. And now it's our job to keep going back and saying that can't be a one-time thing. We have to increase base funding. And to increase base funding, that means we don't have to keep coming back year after year after year after year, making the case. We should raise that base funding to a reasonable level that actually addresses the needs. I think my colleague, my other half on the House, my dear friend, Mike Howard, made the case in the visual way that I still think is most effective. The base budget for housing going into the 2023 session, if you looked at the entire state budget as a gallon of water, 1 tablespoon was housing's budget. Like, that is just wild when you think about your own home, your own life. How much of your budget does housing take up? It is far more than 1 tablespoon to your gallon of budget. It is likely 1/3 of your budget if you're lucky. And it is likely much more for most people. So we really just need to massively increase the state's investment in housing. And as much as I am walking around the halls of the Capitol and have been for the last 4 years, preaching this to my colleagues, I can't do it alone. Mike can't do it alone. We need you to be making the case to your legislators, to be telling the stories of your community, to highlight how deep this need is and how absolutely unacceptable the base funding level is. We cannot keep it there. We must raise it. I will say the one bright spot that we had of non-one-time money, it was a small amount, $50 million, but we put it into the Bring It Home voucher program, which will be coming online this next year, because we know, as Tony Schertler was just saying, those housing choice vouchers are like the most effective tool that we have to get people into safe and stable housing and keep them there. And so as we stand up the state's program, that's where we chose to put the small increase we got in base funding, but it's not enough. We need it across all housing programs. And so my plea, as always, to you is to reach out to your legislators, tell the stories of your community. I think if there is, absolutely an organization that is so deeply connected to your communities, it is MICAH, because you have those individual at-home stories. And that is what we need more than anything at the Capitol to make the case that it is time for a real, substantial, permanent, dedicated raise in the housing base funding that we have. That is what we need long term. So please come and help us make the case to do that. And, we'll keep fighting for it every single day at the Capitol.
Thank you so much, Senator Port, Chair of the Senate Housing and Homelessness Committee, just an incredible champion for all the work that you've done over the years, as well as your partner there, Chair Howard, in the Housing and Finance Committee in the House, and just incredible champions for all the work. The constitutional amendment, of course, MICAH supports that. That would raise on an annual basis just a little bit under $500 million that would be dedicated to housing. It is an area that we are pushing hard, both with Homes for All as well as with MICAH and a number of other groups, and has a lot of folks that have experienced homelessness and housing instability that are in the leadership of that. So just thank you so much. Obviously have to raise revenues, and that we need to use different tax breaks that we get resources to local communities, as we've done over the last couple of years too. Thank you so much for all your incredible work, and thank you for joining us today too. We just have 2 more slides just to give you a little bit of an update of other bus tours that are coming up. So I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll be closing out for the day. Thank you all for joining us today. And I'm going to share my screen and pass it back over to Pat here in just a minute. Pat, you want to talk about ways people can be involved?
Yes, you can certainly join us at our chapter meetings for MICAH South Dakota County. We meet every second Tuesday, and our timing is 5 to 6:30 p.m. And we meet on Zoom, so you have no excuse. And just kind of eat supper a little early or a little late. But we do that every month and plan things like this bus tour, and also a policy update that we handle that we do before the legislature begins. I want to just let you know there's a few more new ones coming up for the bus tours in our other chapters. Next Tuesday, which is, next Tuesday, the Northeast chapter will be, and all of these meet from 8 to 9:30, pretty much. You can see on the slide the dates. There's also Anoka, St. Paul, Housing for All will meet on Thursday, October 24th, and the Minneapolis one will be Monday, October 28th from 1:30 to 3. So you can contact those people to find out how you can sign up and register for those. So thank you for all that you do to help us and help the people in our community who need the help and maybe don't have the time or the opportunity to share and to contact legislators and get involved in the community as we do. Our last slide here talks about Pope Francis saying back in 2015, we can find no social or moral justification, no justification whatsoever for lack of housing. We must demand that all our systems and organizations do what is needed to guarantee everyone without exception that they have a safe, decent, accessible, and affordable home. And that's what we do at MICAH. And thank you so much for joining us today. And as I said, the second Tuesday, every evening, we are meeting on the second Tuesday with Zoom and our MICAH South organization. Thank you again for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
Thank you all.